how sometimes a tragedy feels too perfect? Like, the timing, the aftermath, all of it just lines up a little too clean? That's what it felt like for us when Charlie was shot.
But I'm starting to think that the assassination of Charlie Kirk was something akin to a regicide, right? The assassination of a king to install a new ruler who the king would have never approved.
Tim Pool just dropped secret Turning Point USA documents, and the shockwaves haven't stopped since. These files completely flipped what everyone thought they knew about Charlie Kirk's passing. The leaks weren't just messy accounting reports. They were a blueprint for a hidden money trail, donor pressure, and serious behind-the-scenes power games. Suddenly, Charlie's passing doesn't seem random at all. It looks more like the final move in a bigger plan to replace him and seize control of everything he built. But here's where it gets really wild. The person who gained the most after Charlie was gone was his wife, Erica. And once you hear how deep this story goes, it's hard not to question what she really knew. A week before everything happened, Charlie wasn't losing sleep over politics, poll numbers, or student chapters. Nope. He was worried about money, serious money. And guess who allegedly knew all about it? His close friend, Candace Owens. Insiders claim that Charlie had uncovered something massive. Roughly $8.5 million mysteriously funneled into a Turning Point-linked shell company. That same company, according to reports, was mentioned in Tim Pool's leaked files, the very documents that were supposed to blow the lid off a secret network of shadow transactions. Charlie, being who he was, reportedly told his inner circle he wanted to clean house. He planned to launch a financial integrity division inside Turning Point to track every sketchy transfer, every questionable donation, and every dollar that didn't add up. He wanted full transparency. But not everyone wanted that kind of light shining on their books. That plan Charlie had, it didn't sit well with certain people who had plenty to hide. Emails backing up his suspicions were said to exist.
All right, you guys, so a week before Charlie lost his life, he expressed some concerns about the finances at Turning Point USA. In fact, he wanted to put together an entire department, a little mini department, to address those concerns, and we have evidence of that.
Until they suddenly vanished into thin air. But not fast enough. Because insiders at Turning Point reportedly saw them first, and the panic that followed was real. They knew if those messages ever reached the press, it would have blown everything wide open. And right at that exact moment, Erica Kirk went completely silent. No statements, no posts, nothing. Almost like she already knew those numbers Charlie was digging into would eventually lead straight to her doorstep. And people tend to forget this detail, but the IRS didn't just pop up out of nowhere at Turning Point's headquarters. Someone triggered that visit. Investigators had already been keeping an eye on the organization after noticing that its skyrocketing revenue didn't match what was officially being reported. Turning Point's numbers had exploded, jumping from just a few million per year to nearly $40 million, and all in record time. But according to insiders, the receipts told a totally different story. Donations weren't lining up. Long-term reports showed almost $400 million raised across the decade, yet somehow that massive fortune had practically vanished. You don't have to be a financial expert to see how bad that looks, and neither did the IRS. Every money trail they followed kept circling back to one familiar name, Erica Kirk. And just when you think the mystery couldn't get any deeper, there's the timeline around Charlie's final moments. Erica said she found out about what happened from his chief of staff, Mikey McCoy. But according to reports, the timestamp on that call doesn't line up with her story. That small detail has people asking what really happened in those final hours, and why do the pieces of her version keep shifting? Erica's story just doesn't add up, not even close. She claims that Mikey McCoy personally told her that Charlie had passed.
Everybody cried on camera, sure. The fireworks, the tributes, the prayers. But behind the scenes, in the executive offices, you could feel the relief. Because within a week, everything exploded. Donations, attention, influence, sky high. Donors that were ghosting us started calling again. The people who were distancing themselves, suddenly, they wanted meetings. Charlie was worth more dead than alive. And now, Turning Point USA is more powerful than it's ever been.
But here's the catch. Mikey didn't even know yet. There hadn't been any confirmation at that point, so now there are two massive red flags. The money trail pointing straight toward Erica, and the timeline of events surrounding Charlie's passing that also leads right back to her. That overlap is exactly what made people in Charlie's inner circle start to panic. Because if she wasn't honest about that phone call, what else might she have twisted? What made it even more unsettling was how Erica seemed to shift overnight. Before authorities even confirmed the full details, she had already stepped into full public view. Perfectly styled, camera ready, and confident. We're talking full glam, stage appearances, flawlessly rehearsed speeches, and national interviews all lined up like clockwork. It didn't look like someone mourning, and it looked like someone stepping into a new role. And here's where things get seriously suspicious. At that very same time, federal agents were already knee-deep in a major political investigation known as Project Arctic Frost, and buried in those files was none other than Charlie's organization, Turning Point USA. That means they weren't just looking into campus debates or conservative student events. No, this was something way bigger. A tangled network of political donors, internal rivalries, and hidden power struggles stretching across multiple groups. The deeper investigators dug, the stranger it got. Reports claim that the inconsistencies around Erica kept piling up. Records that didn't align, sudden statement changes, missing emails. And the more pressure agents applied, the clearer it became that someone close to Charlie might have been working overtime to control the story once he was gone. Then came the boldest move yet. A Turning Point insider decided to break the silence and risk everything by leaking what they knew.
These new records show that Arctic Frost was much broader than just an electoral matter. The case was expanded to Republican organizations. On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's groups, Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic Frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends.
And what they revealed changed everything. That whistleblower's leak turned everything upside down. What they brought forward wasn't some vague accusation. It was hard data, internal memos, and voice recordings that left investigators stunned. The files showed secret meetings between Turning Point executives, unusual donor coordination calls, and even coded messages exchanged on encrypted apps just days before Charlie's incident. Every thread that got pulled seemed to trace back to a single name: Erica Kirk. Now, the public only saw polished headlines and PR statements about healing and continuing Charlie's mission. But behind closed doors, people who had worked with him for years were starting to whisper that none of this made sense. Charlie had always been meticulous, the kind of guy who double-checked every figure and every contract. He was planning a full audit of Turning Point's accounts, and according to insiders, he had already found missing transactions worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. That discovery reportedly put several powerful people in a panic. Internal chat logs hinted that certain donors and board members were uncomfortable with his tone. Translation? They were terrified of what he might reveal. And the whistleblower claimed that the sudden silence from Charlie's office wasn't just about grief, it was part of an orchestrated lockdown where staff were ordered to delete correspondence, backdate emails, and scrub digital trails connecting Erica to the mysterious shell companies. Here's where it gets eerie. One of Charlie's old assistants said that 3 days before his passing, he had a meeting scheduled with his accountant, a private investigator, and his lawyer. The topic: tracing donor leakage. That meeting never happened. Instead, his phone went dark the night before, and his cloud account was wiped less than 24 hours later. Coincidence? People don't think so. What made everything even stranger was Erica's behavior right after.
Actions, attention, influence, sky high. Donors that were ghosting us started calling again. The people who were distancing themselves, suddenly they wanted meetings. Charlie was worth more dead than alive. And now, Turning Point USA is more powerful than it's ever been. And the person running it? Yeah, I'm talking about Erica, the one everybody treats like some kind of evangelical Joan of Arc. I used to work under her, and she's not who she pretends to be. Charlie figured that out near the end. I think that's why he's gone.
Instead of keeping a low profile, she jumped straight into the spotlight like nothing had happened. She booked back-to-back TV interviews, started talking about continuing the mission, and launched her own foundation in record time. Insiders said it looked more like a power transition than a widow's mourning period. Some even pointed out that she began referring to herself as the new face of the movement, language that rubbed a lot of Charlie's allies the wrong way. Candace Owens, who had been close to both of them, reportedly distanced herself almost immediately. Sources claim she told friends that something feels off, and that the speed at which Erica rebranded everything didn't feel natural. And then came the biggest twist. Documents surfaced showing that Erica had quietly been listed as a signatory on one of Turning Point's financial sub-accounts long before Charlie's passing. That detail had never been public knowledge. She wasn't a financial officer, she wasn't an employee, yet somehow she had the authority to authorize wire transfers. That revelation sent shockwaves through Charlie's supporters, and the question became unavoidable. How deep was her involvement really? The whistleblower's testimony added even more layers. They described how, in the weeks leading up to Charlie's final days, internal tension had hit an all-time high. Board meetings were getting heated. People were arguing about optics and narrative control. There were notes about stabilizing leadership and ensuring continuity, phrases that in hindsight sounded like they were preparing for a sudden change at the top. And sure enough, once Charlie was gone, those same board members lined up behind Erica without hesitation. Within 2 weeks, she had the full support of the executive committee and access to Turning Point's accounts, media partners, and event schedule. The speed of that transition left people stunned. It's almost like the paperwork had already been prepared in advance. Even stranger, several of Charlie's close staffers who questioned the move suddenly resigned or were quietly let go.
Came into the picture, he wanted to take us in a new direction, away from the whole Christian Zionist thing. He started saying it out loud, that America's movement needed to stand on its own, that we couldn't just keep doing PR for another country. And that's when everything started changing around him. People he trusted started keeping him out of meetings. His calendar got lost more than once, and then he started digging. He told a few of us, quietly, that he'd found stuff about her past. Not rumors, documents. Back when she was working with some orphanage in Romania, a place that suddenly shut down not long before Israeli handlers introduced her to him. Turns out it wasn't an orphanage, it was something way darker.
One insider said that anyone who mentioned the missing money or the audit was either frozen out or reassigned. Another claimed that the IT department was ordered to refresh company devices and reissue laptops under new accounts. Essentially, they wiped the old system clean. Meanwhile, federal investigators working on the Arctic Frost case were still digging through Turning Point's records, and they weren't the only ones. Journalists began comparing donation ledgers and quickly spotted something odd. Certain high-profile donors appeared to have made identical contributions to 2 separate Turning Point-linked nonprofits. In accounting terms, that's called duplication. But in real life, it can mean money laundering or internal siphoning. The strangest part? One of those duplicate entries listed an address that matched one of Erica's private LLCs. That discovery was quietly shared with investigators, and soon after, the LLC's website and registration details disappeared. It was deleted from public databases almost overnight. As more reporters caught wind of this, Turning Point's communications team went into full defense mode. They issued press releases calling the allegations baseless and politically motivated. But every denial only made people dig deeper. Online sleuths began piecing together patterns, shared accountants, overlapping board members, matching email signatures, all suggesting a hidden network running beneath the organization's clean, patriotic image. Even more suspicious were the personal text messages that leaked weeks later. One conversation allegedly showed a Turning Point board member saying, "She's ready, let's move forward." Another said, "He'll never sign off on this audit, it's time." Whether real or fabricated, those messages spread like wildfire across the internet, adding fuel to the already massive fire.
She'd forget his birthday on purpose. She'd laugh about it. Their wedding anniversary? She'd forget that too, even though her whole damn wedding was paid for by Turning Point. One time, in front of staff, she told him, "You know, honey, if anything ever happens to you, things might finally run smooth around here for once." And she smiled when she said it. Not nervous, not joking, like she was already the boss.
Erica, of course, stayed calm on the surface, smiling during interviews, calling herself strong and focused on healing. But insiders paint a different picture. They say behind the scenes she was furious, constantly monitoring mentions of her name and reportedly contacting media outlets to adjust the narrative. One journalist even hinted that their story about the missing funds got pulled at the last minute after outside pressure. Only by this point, fans were split. Some believed Erica was unfairly targeted because she was a woman in a leadership role. Others thought she was playing everyone like chess pieces, turning grief into a brand, tragedy into influence, and secrecy into power. Either way, the public fascination only grew, and so did the pressure for answers. Then came the kicker. A hidden drive discovered by Charlie's lawyer, labeled simply operations. Inside, according to leaks, were spreadsheets of donations, donor notes, and private memos between Charlie and his finance team. One note reportedly said, "If something happens to me, check account C." That message sent chills down everyone's spine. Account C, as it turned out, was the very account that had Erica's digital signature. Investigators are still sorting through what's real and what's rumor, but one thing's undeniable. The closer people look, the more everything points back to the same small circle of power around Charlie. The whistleblower's courage opened Pandora's box, and now no one can close it. Whether it's missing millions, suspicious call times, or a sudden leadership switch that happened a little too perfectly, every new detail adds another crack in the polished image Erica has worked so hard to protect. What once looked like a tragedy is now starting to look like a blueprint, carefully drawn, perfectly timed, and executed without mercy. And the real question everyone's asking now is simple. Was Charlie's downfall just bad luck?
That's the real reason. I've not said anything particularly disparaging about AmFest, but they told me I couldn't come. Why? Maybe it's because I said we should stop funding Israel. Maybe it's because I said we shouldn't be giving money to Ukraine, given the official reason. I had made hurtful comments. Maybe. I'd been told they're full. Hard to do. Perhaps.
Or was it the final move in a much bigger plan that's still unfolding right in front of us? As the investigation deepened, things inside Turning Point started to unravel fast. The whistleblower's evidence had already shaken the foundation, but what came next turned the situation into pure chaos. More insiders stepped forward, each bringing a different piece of the puzzle. Deleted files, voice memos, and internal notes that painted a picture of an organization spiraling behind closed doors. According to one of those insiders, the night before everything happened, there was a late-night emergency meeting between several high-ranking Turning Point figures. Strangely, Charlie wasn't there, but Erica was. That alone raised eyebrows because those meetings were normally restricted to senior directors and financial officers. Yet somehow Erica had a seat at the table, and by morning, several of those attendees had wiped their phones clean. The few messages that survived made it clear something serious was going on. One text read, "Keep him calm until Monday." Another said, "Don't let him make that call." Nobody knows for sure what that meant, but the timing was suspicious. Monday was the day Charlie had planned to meet with auditors to expose the missing funds. And it wasn't just digital traces that hinted at trouble. Staffers noticed odd movements around the office that week. Boxes were being carried out by people they didn't recognize, shredders were running nonstop, and security cameras were mysteriously offline for several hours at a time. When questioned later, management claimed it was just routine maintenance. But come on, maintenance right when every eye was supposed to be on the financial department? That's way too convenient. Meanwhile, Erica was already crafting a different story in public. She appeared composed, perfectly dressed, and ready with statements that sounded less like heartbreak and more like strategy. Her first televised speech focused not on Charlie's memory, but on organizational unity and future leadership. Even the tone of her voice sounded rehearsed, confident, assertive, and completely in control. Behind the scenes, though, tensions exploded. Candace Owens reportedly confronted Erica in private, asking for access to Charlie's original financial notes. But sources claim Erica refused, saying everything was classified under legal review. That response didn't sit right with anyone who knew how open Charlie had always been about his work.
The guys who were doing security for Charlie that day should not work in security ever again.
It has been destroyed and not preserved. It's very concerning. And if it has, then it's very concerning that they're telling you they don't have it.
Candace allegedly left that meeting furious, warning others that something bigger was at play, and she might have been right. Because as investigators combed through Charlie's electronic records, they stumbled upon something massive. An encrypted folder in his cloud storage titled Vanguard. When decrypted, it contained a map of Turning Point's donor channels, several hidden sub-accounts, and coded references that matched those shell companies Tim Pool had mentioned earlier. One file even listed projected revenue under a heading labeled post-transition. That phrase sent chills through everyone who read it. Post-transition from what? At the same time, Turning Point's board quietly issued a vote giving Erica temporary oversight authority. That was supposed to be a short-term measure, but weeks turned into months, and she still hadn't stepped down. Instead, she hired new staff, reshuffled departments, and started rebranding the entire organization under her own image. Even the logo and website got redesigned, replacing old slogans with ones that sounded more like corporate catchphrases than grassroots ideals. People close to Charlie's family were horrified. His parents reportedly reached out demanding access to his office and private files, but they were denied under the claim that everything was evidence in review. That's when they hired their own independent accountant, and what they found made things even murkier. Large sums of money had been moved between Turning Point and Erica's private foundation within weeks of Charlie's passing. None of those transfers appeared on the organization's official ledgers. Then came another shocker. Several donors claimed they never approved their names being used for contributions that appeared under their businesses. That meant someone was likely moving funds and attaching donor IDs without consent. When those revelations hit social media, Erica's team tried to shut it down fast, blaming clerical errors and data mismatches. But at that point, no one was buying it. The optics were terrible. Public trust was crumbling, the media smelled blood, and Turning Point's own members started jumping ship. Internal emails later leaked showing Erica's leadership team instructing staff to avoid engagement with conspiracy content, but that only made it worse because by calling it conspiracy, they made everyone assume it wasn't. And that's when the most damning piece of evidence surfaced. A voice recording from an unnamed source captured during that last executive meeting. In the clip, a woman who sounds just like Erica can be heard saying, "We can't afford an audit right now. It'll destroy everything he worked for." That line spread like wildfire online, replayed millions of times, dissected by fans and analysts alike. Some called it manipulation, others said it sounded like fear of exposure, fear of losing power, or both. Through it all, Erica stayed silent publicly, letting lawyers and spokespeople talk for her. But her silence only fueled more questions. Every new document leak, every resurfaced video, every statement from Charlie's allies painted a darker picture, one where loyalty, money, and control clashed in the most brutal way possible. By now, it wasn't just about Turning Point anymore. It was about the empire behind it. The donors, the deals, the secret influence networks that had propped it up for years. And with every revelation, Erica's name kept appearing in the middle of it all. Whether as a planner, a beneficiary, or simply someone in the right place at the wrong time, her role had become impossible to ignore. Even people who once defended her started asking the same question. If Erica was truly innocent, why did every paper trail, every timeline, and every message seem to lead right back to her? Because at this stage, it wasn't just speculation anymore. It was a tangled web of secrets unraveling in real time. Now the internet's blowing up again because insiders are finally starting to expose everything that's been hidden, and people are convinced that Erica is right at the center of it all. The moment she stepped into Charlie's world, everything changed. His role at Turning Point shifted overnight, his influence got quietly reduced, and suddenly, the same people who once depended on him were now keeping their distance. That whole devoted wife image Erica worked so hard to project, a lot of people are starting to think it was all an act, a polished mask built for cameras, interviews, and sympathy. But when fans rewatched those clips of Charlie speaking about her, something felt off. His tone, his hesitation, even his eyes, they told a different story. The disappointment was written all over his face. He looked like a man who had just realized something devastating. It's almost like Erica had a purpose from the very beginning. A long game that only makes sense now looking back. And just when things couldn't get wilder, Tim Pool suddenly got banned from America Fest, the same event where he was supposed to speak about his leaked documents. The official reason? Scheduling issues. But nobody's buying that excuse. Not when the timing was that perfect. Right after he dropped files exposing donor manipulation, internal feuds, and even private conversations where Charlie allegedly said he was being pressured by top donors over his political stance. Charlie had reportedly been open about wanting more independence, and according to Tim's reports, that didn't sit well with some very powerful people. And who was right there in the middle of those heated conversations, publicly denying everything the moment it went viral? Josh Hammer, one of the names mentioned in those very same leaked chats. It's almost poetic. Deny it publicly, then get caught in the receipts moments later. That's when it all started to click for people, when why Turning Point was so eager to silence Tim Pool, why his name vanished from speaker lists, and why the whole story suddenly went quiet online. Because if what Tim shared was real, it meant the backlash against Charlie wasn't random. It was intentional. If certain donors were furious with him for challenging them, that gives a motive that's completely separate from the messy money trail and the suspicious gaps in Erica's timeline. Then came the real shocker. Tim didn't stop at leaks. He went on air and flat out said it. According to him, security failures were at the heart of what happened to Charlie. He referenced a new KUTV report that revealed possible missing evidence in the case. Evidence that could have changed everything if it hadn't mysteriously disappeared. That single revelation made Tim rethink how the entire investigation was handled from the start. And honestly, he's not alone. Viewers and analysts have been saying the same thing for months, that too many details were lost, misfiled, or inconclusive to be coincidence. The timeline was messy, the reports didn't align, and the people who tried to ask questions inside Turning Point were either ignored or pushed out. But the craziest twist? Tim's document might not even be the biggest one out there. According to his sources, investigators are sitting on another file, one that ties together Charlie's rebellion against certain donors, the internal financial black hole, and the exact individuals who allegedly worked behind the scenes to shut him down. If that's true, it means the story isn't just about Erica or Turning Point anymore. It's about a much larger system of influence, power, and money that's been quietly running things for years. And when that second file finally drops, it won't just expose one organization, and it could shake up the entire circle of people who thought they were untouchable. Because as things stand right now, every new leak, every deleted post, every silenced insider seems to confirm the same suspicion. The truth has been buried under layers of PR, politics, and fear. And once those walls start crumbling, no one involved is walking away clean. Tim Pool's report might have been dismissed at first, but the deeper investigators dig, the more his claims line up with the facts. There's too much missing data, too many contradictions, and way too many people who suddenly don't remember what really happened. The pieces are there, they just haven't been put together publicly yet. And so here's the real question now. If even half of what these leaks suggest is true, who's protecting who, and how far are they willing to go to keep it that way? Because sooner or later, every secret surfaces, and when that next document drops, the entire house of cards could finally collapse. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this story is far from over, and you're going to want to be here when the next piece of the puzzle finally comes out. See you on the next one.